Hey, look, it's time for Bring It In, troops. Little Zoom from Quarantine Show. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Hi, David.
My friend, how are you?
So calm. Such a together, sort of on pace morning.
I am, yeah, it's going to be a wild ride, I have a feeling.
Uh,
So I'm starting out nice and
It
basic.
is. It is. So I'm sometimes like to publish these sort of crazy things with like a little bit of Russia and a little bit of silliness.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. And just published this, I guess it says 7 minutes ago on GD Screen, and that is accurate, which meant sometimes bringing these things to the moment of publication is a little bit of an exciting time, which means I'm sweating. But let's talk about it for a second. Well, I'm just gonna not to summarize this whole story, but let's settle in for just a second. Catherine Belton has been on the show. If you guys haven't seen that episode, it's probably the smartest hour we've done on the show. Bring It In. In her amazing book, Putin's People, I can hold it up if you want. Look, Putin's People, and everybody, honestly, all the people who know the Kremlin stuff way better than I do, revere Catherine Belton in that book. She has this little story. For one Russian tycoon, the process reminded him of an old Soviet anecdote from many years before. In those days, when the Soviet Union was careening towards bankruptcy, the KGB was preparing to send an agent to the US. The agent had thought up an attractive cover story for himself. He would arrive in America as a rich man with a fleet of yachts and a prestigious mansion. The whole of US society would come to him. He told his KGB boss how effective this plan would be, and the chief wholeheartedly approved. But when it came to seeking approval from the KGB finance department, the concept had to be changed. The agent was told there was no money for such a scheme. Instead, he would have to head to the US as a homeless person without money. That was the situation, the tycoon said, and now the dream has come true. They have the big yachts and the private planes, and here they have their big houses. There's Chelsea Football Club. It's not just Abramovich, but it's a whole group that have descended into the West. All right, so that's a little story. In that section of the book, she's talking about Roman Abramovich, who has a complicated business history and owns the Chelsea Football Club in London. And another one of his investors in that same transaction was Alisher Usmanov. Usmanov matters in various ways, mostly in that when the Paradise Papers were leaked, this is where we learned, the International Consortium of Journalists discovered like all sorts of leaked files which showed how money moves in secret ways. And one of the things that we learned then was that one of Silicon Valley's premier investors, Digital Sky Technologies, as run by Yuri Milner, which made like one of the key investments in Facebook at a key time. A who's who of Silicon Valley have Digital Sky Technologies investments. Paradise Papers revealed that a good chunk of his money from the beginning, when he first started investing in Facebook, was from Alisher Usmanov. Now I'm going to read a little bit from another of my favorite journalists, who has not been on the show, Julia Ioffe, who wrote in The Atlantic that at the time of all this came out, in 2017, she wrote this story in The Atlantic. She says, DST is Digital Sky Technologies, Yuri Miller's company. DST has made some legitimately lucrative investments for Usmanov. He reportedly made $1 billion on the $200 million he invested in Facebook. Not bad. The Russian companies that DST invested his money in also did quite well, but that was only half the point. The other half was to give the Kremlin a way to control these new and very influential companies, to make sure there was a receptive person there when the Kremlin called the demand. What is DST? DST is the main government internet company, said one Russian tech executive who wished to remain anonymous for fear of government reprisals when I put this question to him in 2010. He was not the only one. In the tech community, another Russian executive told me at the time, Usmanov, and by extension DST, is interpreted as a person who, on the Kremlin's instructions, buys up various Russian properties. Interviews with other prominent players in the booming Russian tech sector, local executives, as well as Western investors, revealed that this was the near unanimous understanding of DST's role in the Russian tech marketplace. People's equally unanimous reluctance to go on the record showed the sincerity of their belief. Now, smarter people than me can tell you what that means exactly, what the effect of it was, how it might have played out with, the various companies that DST invested in. I'll just tell you that DST invested, there was a round of investment in Robinhood, the app that Tom Haberstroh wrote about, was led by Memphis Grizzlies investor Josh Kushner. and the other big investor was Digital Sky Technology. So Josh Kushner sets the terms, Yuri Milner's DST joins, and now that's how Robinhood makes its unicorn round. The one that made it worth more than $1 billion was this round. I am not alleging that there's like Kremlin controls on everything that happens here, but I'm saying that now we're in this moment where, like, for 1 million people, Elizabeth Warren tweeted like, "We need a big inquest into what happened with Robinhood." Right? Obviously, my point here is we do. Like, we need to understand these things better because it doesn't feel straightforward. It doesn't look straightforward. And when you look into there's a bunch of NBA ties here. There's a bunch of people who invest in the NBA. Jim Breyer is a Celtics investor. I mentioned Josh Kushner. Hold on, there are more. This is my memory. Mark Stevens, the very man who got in trouble for shoving Kyle Lowry, right? His firm, I don't know about him, but his firm, Sequoia Capital, was one of the biggest Robinhood investors, etc. This is how a lot of business gets done. And it's a little hard to understand from afar. And if you're a Robinhood app user, you might worry a little bit that like, this is a business that's catering more to those investors and serving them better than us, right? Us people doing regular stuff. David, I just talked for a long time. How are we doing?
So listen, I don't think that I'm a narcissist. I don't think I see the world as if it revolves around me, but I just have to tell you, after reading this morning and I wanted to click on every link. I did click on some. I wanted to get all this information in, but I just kept thinking, I wrote an article today about how Nikola Jokic is like Captain America. Like, how are we working in the same team? It's amazing. You didn't even mention, I don't think, just now, the Wharton connections with Philly. There's a lot of themes in all of your writings, including this one. But I like how you just phrased this just a moment ago about the back room kind of stuff, and it's just a really small world of people making enormously important financial and other decisions for 1 billion people, or whatever the number you want to say is, 2 billion, 3 billion. It's a big number, right? And there's not a lot of light in those rooms.
Yeah, the Wharton one is funny. It's sort of one of the easiest parts to grasp of this, but just for the record, here's what we know for sure. The group that owns the Philadelphia 76ers right now is a group of people, Josh Harris, Dave Blitzer, some others, who went to Wharton together, the University of Pennsylvania's business school. That's not hard to establish. What I've been aware of, and it's just surprising, is how many other people who come up in these stories also went to Wharton then, or around that time. One of them is Yuri Milner, this guy I'm talking about. He's Russian Israeli, grew up mostly in Moscow, and then had a big, career change when he came into the U.S. and went to Wharton, and then went back to Moscow. But it's he's one. And now let me just find the whole list. It's kind of amazing. Hold on, shuffling through papers. Okay, people who went to Wharton: Josh Harris, Dave Blitzer, Art Rubel, and some other Sixers owners. When Prokhorov owned the Nets, Christophe Charlier was one of the key executives there. He remains a key executive for Prokhorov, but not at the Nets, obviously. He went to Wharton around that time, as did Milton Lee, who's been in the NBA and around the NBA for a long time. I mentioned that Josh Kushner led a round that included Yuri Milner's company investing in Robinhood. It also included, there's one other firm called Green Oaks Capital, where one of the managing partners is a guy named Benny Peretz, who also went to Wharton around then. And then you may remember from a different True Post, and I don't think we want to go on this rabbit hole right now, but there's a guy named David Giovannis, who is an incredible American historical figure. We should all know that name. I learned about him from the Senate Intelligence Committee report, but there's a photo of David Giovannis with Leon Black, founder of Apollo, and Donald Trump at a party in Moscow in the 90s, where like this is when the Senate's very concerned. Trump may have been in some ways compromised by intelligence, and it may have involved women. And David Giovannis, who went to Wharton at this time, David Giovannis had a reputation. Let me read it. Several witnesses told the committee that Giovannis also engaged in a pattern of behavior regarding women that made him, and potentially others around him, vulnerable to exploitation by the Russian intelligence and security services. That is some careful writing. But the point is, you don't want to party with that guy. Anyway, and not even mention, like, unrelated to all this, I would also tell you that people who went to Wharton include Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, and David Sternsky, deputy forever, Joel Litfin, who's now retired. But just a lot of, it's not that big of a school.
What was the name of the person that you linked to? Because I clicked the link. I just have time to read that also, where the New York Post article, you just,
oh God,
this funky guy. I forget how you worded it.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
You didn't mention him just now. Did he go to Wharton too?
Yeah, he did.
The guy was in the picture with all those girls.
Yeah. Hold on. What's his name? Let's find his name.
Yeah.
I will tell you.
Okay. Yeah. Because,
Mark,
we're not disparaging Wharton. Wharton didn't teach these people anything sinister. They met each other and decided to do whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah. So they call this guy you're asking about Mark Letter, who's called the Hugh Hefner of the Hamptons. There's a New York Post story with, like, it just goes on and on with him, with like the neighbors are complaining, the cops are there all the time. At one point, they wouldn't let him throw another party in the Hamptons until he put up $10,000 because it was so likely to like cause problems. Yeah, he's a hell of a guy. He's one of the Sixers investors right now.
So this reminds me of something. So Saturday, I'm not gonna go into our time at the beach again, but we had this amazing day, my wife and I.
Why not? Why would anybody be bothered with that?
I'm not even that subtle about it. So we had this incredible day, and I wanted to have a great night, but we're in a pandemic. We're not going anywhere. The weather was great, but we're outside all the time. We were outside all day, and I had this plan. We're doing veggies only all week. So I'm like, you know what, Saturday night, let's not make anything special. Just make some nachos. We'll throw a little meat and black beans, and I'll make a yummy tequila drink, and we'll watch something amazing. And we chose to watch Hamilton again. We hadn't seen Hamilton in a few months, maybe 5 or 6 months. And of course, it's amazing. I can't get out of my head. But that great scene of the room where it happened, which is, such a famous phrase now, we talked about it afterwards. Like that's how our country was made. It wasn't just about the trade-off to make Washington D.C. the capital in exchange for XYZ. All of it, we can assume, in terms of what's in the Constitution, was created in back rooms. And so we didn't know any better. We as a people didn't know any better then to shed light on all these things as we do now. It doesn't mean we know. We just know we should know. That's your point. That's what a big theme of what you're talking about is. There should be a lot more light on all of these kinds of things happening, and there isn't. Am I wrong?
Honestly, so being a manager is terribly hard, right? And like one of the things that happens is like, this is totally hypothetical, but someone will come to you and say like, I'm pregnant, right? Or I have this tragedy in the family, or I have cancer, right? And then they might need something, right? They might need some time off, a different job assignment, different hours, whatever. And you can't go broadcasting that.
Yeah.
Right. It has to stay in the back room. Like, I don't mind that some stuff is in the back room, right? That's not alarming to me. Like, of course, also just that's how conversations happen, right? That's how deals get made, right? You're not going to make a deal with the eyes of the world on you, probably, right? So fine, some stuff. What's getting me a little animated here is, well, let's use Robinhood as one example, but there are many. So since 2013, they've been promoting themselves as inspired by Occupy Wall Street, right? They're going to like tear down institutions and give the proceeds to the people, right? That's the exact mission they pick. It's unlike, they're competing against like TD Ameritrade here, right? Like, their competition is all just like, oh, it's a little faster, a little more reliable. It's a bank, right? Like,
who are you impersonating?
Like,
no. Who are you impersonating there?
Just banks generally, I think. Yeah, just
bank
marketing.
That's awesome.
Bank marketing is all just like, look, a beautiful family is smiling with the results of their interaction. Like, yay, everyone's so friendly. He just answered my call right on time. Like, okay, so no, this is not that. This is they actually have referenced, not, I don't know if I've seen it in their paid marketing, but in their comments, they've referenced Occupy Wall Street as an inspiration. This is not me like projecting. Um, Meanwhile, they've just been, in terms of like their service, it's been pretty bad, right? They've let down investors. There's a little list here, but let me just.
I saw that. Yeah, I was amazed anyone still even uses the app. A lot of apps close when they screw up like that.
Right. So they've had okay. This for fun. They announced they were opening bank accounts and then learned that they needed regulatory approval for that. Like, what? Had to like walk it back. That's kind of a big whoops.
Yeah.
That same week, according to the New York Times, Robinhood released software that erroneously reversed the direction of customer trades, which meant that a bet on a stock going up was turned into a bet it would go down. I'm going to keep reading. Technological issues continue piling up. In 2019, they discovered that Robinhood software accidentally allowed them to borrow almost infinite amounts of money. Last March, as the pandemic hit, Robinhood's app seized up for almost 2 days, leading some customers to lose more than $1 million. At that time, the CEO, Mr. Tenev, said in a blog post, "We owe it to you to do better." 5 current and former Robinhood employees said that Mr. Tenev moved quickly to new projects without fixing the previous problems. Um, After the March outages, they said Mr. Tenev told the company that it would significantly ramp up its infrastructure and customer support. Yet almost a year later, the startup does not offer a customer service phone number. What the hell? Last month, the site went down 19 times, more than twice as often as Charles Schwab or Fidelity. And then on top of that, only in 2018, a Bloomberg story broke the news that they were making most of their money from selling its customers' orders to high-frequency trading firms like Citadel Securities and Two Sigma Securities. They also got the Massachusetts Securities Division filed a complaint saying that for years, Robinhood has unscrupulously engaged in conduct that exposes Massachusetts investors to potential harm. And then the next day, this is just a month ago, the SEC fined them find them $65 million for costing its customers tens of millions and misleading them about it. Basically, this selling the deal flow to high frequency trading firms deprived customers, in the SEC's view, of $34.1 million, even after taking into account the savings for not paying a commission. So I'll land the plane here, I promise. The problem isn't that some things happen in the back room to me. The problem is that the actual business agenda of this business, right, is unclear. Like it seems like it's here to make life better for retail investors, but it is in fact, it's tough to make a case that it's even doing that. It's tough to make a case even meeting the minimum standards of that. Well, it is actually a fundamental question for me is, who are Robinhood's customers? In the usual business sense, that means like, who pays you for your service, right? So even in these articles, I did it too. I use the phrase Robinhood customers and someone who trades stocks, but you can't even really make that case. Like their customers are Citadel Securities, Two Sigma Securities. You can look up public filings. They're getting 30 million-ish a month from these companies, right? Like this shouldn't be in the back room. It shouldn't be in the back room who your customers are, what your line of business is, how you make money, what you generally do, right? That shouldn't be a mystery, right? But they started in 2013, only with a story broken by Bloomberg in 2018 do we even kind of start to get a whiff of who their customers are. And so while this is all going on, so they raised, they're like the darlings of fintech, right? This is the hottest part of Silicon Valley, this financial technology. They raised $3.2 billion over their first 8 years, I guess. They raised $3.4 billion since Thursday. Since they were in the news as fucking everything up for their customers. Their customers are completely dissatisfied. And the investors, the people in the back room, were like, give me some more of that. Like, this is going perfectly for me, right? What? Like, this is a product that's having a major stumble in its publicly stated mission of serving little investors. They're all over the news feeling irate for not meeting that mark. and the investors are loving it. 3.4 billion since Thursday. What? So anyway, so to me, I'm like, why do we not understand what's going on here? Why can't we just understand what Robinhood does? What's their business? How does it work? How does it really work? Not the
Marketing
BS
line.
version.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do they actually do? Like
Yeah.
that shouldn't be in the back room.
I know that we're going to talk basketball and NBA.
Yeah, we are.
But allow me just to say this. It's in a kind of a large, general statement. Judy and I were talking about it before we started the show. And you and I talked a little bit on the phone, I think maybe over the weekend on this. In the movie The Matrix, I'm not going to go into detail at all. It basically, the computers figured out, the machines figured out that humans don't want it to be paradise, but they mostly want it to be pretty smooth, with a couple of hiccups here and there, and they'll buy anything. And we have right now in America today a huge selection of citizens who just want peace and quiet now after all the tumult the last 4 years and unity. And they want puppy dogs and ice cream all the time because of these last 4 years that we've had, right? And it's just my impression, and the people who are listening and watching us are our friends and our family in a sense with True Hoop. I feel like there was the places like The Ringer and before that, Grantland or whatever, that had great marriage of sports and culture. And they did things like rate movies and rewatch movies. And that's all puppy dogs and ice cream. And there's a place for that, right? We're allowed to be entertained. But the world that we're talking about now, if we just want to ignore it, we'll continue to do all the things that it's been doing. And it's not good for us. And so we have found a niche, and I'm not part of that. I just talk about basketball on the court, really. But you have been able to marry or merge sports and the real world and how connected and interconnected it is. And sometimes it's sinister, and sometimes it may look sinister and it's not. But it bears watching and investigating. And I love that you allow us to take this road into what I think is very, very important.
I just want to
live in a world of just puppy dogs and ice cream.
I also really like puppies. I just want to be
great. Yeah, but not all the time. They get to be annoying too. We need a healthy dose of reality. And as someone who, as a coach, I always tell my players, like, I just can't lie to you. I said the same to my kids all the time.
Right.
I may keep quiet because I'm a decent human.
Right.
If you go 0 for 12 from 3, I'm not going to rip you, right? But I'm not going to say, oh, you played great if you didn't play great. It just cheapens your good efforts anyway.
Yeah, you and I've talked about, since we first met, this idea of like loving the NBA warts and all, right? Like there's a little bit of an urge to like sweep things under the rug just so like we can have a nice night, right? Yeah. Like we talked about, I think the Brene Brown, I heard talking about. Did I tell you this?
No.
Okay, somebody here told me that I might like Brene Brown, and I listened to her podcast, and I thought she had an amazing point. She was basically saying that, like, okay, let's say there's an addict in your family. And Judy knows about Brene Brown. Oh, it was Gerard. Okay, Gerard. Okay, we go. Everyone's on Brene Brown. Yay! I'm new here, but
I'm the only one who doesn't know.
But yeah, no, go for it. So maybe you guys have heard this episode. I thought it was fascinating and brilliant, where she was talking about after storming the Capitol, etc. She's like, it's like having an addict in your family, and who maybe, and then you know that they like drained your parents' bank accounts, caused untold heartache, hurt everybody, and they're like, can't you just be nice and come to Thanksgiving and just be nice, right? And she's like, maybe I got like 40 minutes of being nice at that Thanksgiving when I know all the hurt that has caused you, right? She's like, this is the role of accountability, right? Like, if we have accountability, and then we have, maybe there's some plan where over some long term, your sibling is going to be paying back your parents, or maybe there's something agreed to where they're accountable. You can go to Thanksgiving. It's much better, right? So I love the NBA warts and all, but this thing where I'm like, what am I getting into here, right? Like, to be total, this is like a personal thing, but like, I've had people tell me that my life is at stake for writing about some of these people, right? Like, I need to go to NBA arenas. Am I safe there? Like, I kind of need to understand how this works. I understand like what's actually happening here, right? Like I can't really, without any accountability on this, I can't really just pretend it isn't happening, right? It's just we kind of need, this whole thing I just said about Robinhood, we only know because of journalists, right? Because these Bloomberg writers figured it out about what Robinhood's real business was, right? Like, it's going to be the media, right? It's not going to be led by unfortunately, politicians have to raise money from these same people, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're not going to lead us here. Like, it's going to be the media. We have a job to do. I don't particularly like it either, but I can't just sweep it under the rug. I can't.
Can't ignore it. I'm with you. All right.
Okay.
So on let's move into the NBA this way. What are your thoughts, Henry, about a March All-Star game? If you watch all the games like I do, it's gathering steam on every telecast. What are your thoughts? I can guess, but let's air them publicly, and I'll opine as well.
Devin, her name is Brene Brown, by the way. Yeah, she has a Netflix special, but also I like the podcast. I think she's launching a new podcast actually on Spotify. Okay, so yeah, I was trying to find it before the show. My Twitter feed this morning had an announcement of, like, closing in on a deal to have All-Star with a nurse with an account of everyone in the room wearing masks, most of the staff wearing N95 masks and face shields, while a guy with a beard is all on video and wearing a mask but not very well was talking, and the new variant of COVID spread in that environment. And no one was within 6 feet, etc. So those two things go together very well for me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Then Michael Mina said basically we need to redouble all of our efforts, right? Like,
I haven't seen that yet. Okay, he did.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I know you put it in there. I saw 2 different people on TV recently. 2, doctor, epidemiologist, scientists, brilliant people, whatever their title was. I've seen them on TV a lot, whatever their names are. It was a guy and a girl, 2 different, a man and a woman on 2 different shows. The man was saying, the sky is gorgeous outside. In theory, the sky can be gorgeous outside. Doesn't mean the hurricane isn't offshore. I can talk from experience on that. I have lived that many times, where you can't imagine a hurricane's coming, but it's coming. And he said things are getting better right now, but because of these variants and the lack of real vaccination efforts that could maybe solve it before they really took over, he said it's terrible. He's very, very, very worried. This was 2 nights ago. I saw this. I think it was on CNN. And but this guy's been all over the place, and he's very worried about March. Very worried about March. And then I saw a woman on another show last night saying basically the same thing. This woman's been on, I've seen her a ton, and she's never sounded alarmist. And she literally said, I've never been an alarmist before. I'm scared for the first time. Like, it's going to be a deluge because of these variants. And so as I'm wrapping my arms around all of this, I'm thinking, boy, if we get to the All-Star break, I have players who I work with, who I like, or they're friends of mine, and coaches and executives. I want them out of harm's way. So let's take the All-Star break. If we make it that far and have no more game cancellation, would be amazing. Probably not likely, but let's say we do. Take 10 days off. Everyone stay home. Really talk to them about make sure no one in your family is going anywhere. And then we're going to have to do a week quarantine before you come back. Let's give another 10 days for more vaccines to go out and more vaccinations to occur, whatever. Not let's do a party. That makes no sense to me at all. All the credibility that the NBA has gained from coming back the way they did this summer, and even now they're doing pretty well, is gone if you try to play an All-Star game, a meaningless game, while this pandemic may take a 4th wave and the most deadly wave of all.
I'm not sure how we're doing getting back to basketball, but it's okay.
We're talking about playing basketball.
We are. So in July, like, let's make up a name. Joel Embiid's not allowed to meet the DoorDash guy.
Yeah.
In Florida, with that variant and those infection rates, right? Now like, for all the NBA knows, like, we can go home, right? And then whatever happens, happens. And the world has far higher infection rates and far more dangerous variants. And we don't know for sure who's going to restaurants or not, right? And we're going to have an All-Star game and fans in the stands. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand the, like, supercomputer calculus whereby, like, that degree of risk was the only acceptable risk in July, and now just what? Inside maskless fans? Like what? What? How in the hell is that
Yeah.
possibly
If,
okay?
if they wanted to impress me, they would do an all-star game outdoors, no fans, and just say, you know what, we're gonna let you know 10 days ahead of time where we know it's gonna be warm and dry, and we'll fly in, 25 players, and it'll be great, and we'll just watch it on I won't watch it on TV. I never watch the all-star game, but people can watch it, and these guys will play somewhere outdoors. That would be, to me, maybe doable. Everything else is nuts to me. Anything indoors is crazy to me.
It's to me, it's a little bit of they don't have a Dr. Fauci, or if they do, it's a secret. But like, I would like to have the right to. I'd like them to answer questions about anything ever. That'd be good. That'd be a good start, and frankly, an important safety thing. I mean, like if you look at like, Nasir Little scored 30 points 2 nights ago. Thank the heavens. I thought his career might be over, right? Christy Oshwindon has been on the show a bunch of times, published a story on Elemental yesterday about the science of returning after COVID. In one, it's a small study, but one study of college athletes, including basketball players, who'd had COVID, even not like bad cases in particular, 15% had myocarditis. I'm not a doctor, but I think that's pretty bad. That's like that's a heart problem, right? 15%. So,
Wow.
we do not know that NBA players will be okay after this. We don't.
Was that in Christie's study, her article yesterday?
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I didn't see her. Wow. I need to look at that. That's concerning. So, all right. Where you, you can bring in Dry whenever you want, because I want to talk the Nets first. I was watching them play last night, a great game against the Clippers. And, I thought for a while the Clippers are going to win. I didn't think it was over or anything, but the Nets got themselves a little bit of a lead pretty late. And I don't know what their record is with leads. I think they did give up one gigantic lead. I'm not sure all three guys played, but as currently constructed, coming back from more than like 5 or 6 down against them now with 3 or 4 to play, curtains. Because especially in real stressful games, because they might mail in some games against the bad teams, but they've got 3 guys that can make any shot pretty consistently. And to just bank that all 3 of them are going to be cold late is not a good bet. You cannot get down on them. Now, the truth is they're such a bad defensive team that you may not have that problem in the playoffs, but they are scary. And Durant, Kyrie is amazing, but Durant and Harden on another level. Those 2 guys late in games, and they get the calls from referees in the regular season too. Not that they don't deserve it. There was one controversial call late in the game yesterday where Harden took a 3. Marcus Morris went up. It looked like he blocked him clean on most angles, but Harden did kind of fall sideways, and the ball moved as if he did get fouled. And right away Marcus Morris was saying challenge it. And they did, and he fouled him. And a lot of guys get fouled like that and they don't call it late in games. I'm sorry. I have friends that are referees in the NBA, but it's true. I watch games all the time. They get away with the stars get away with travels and all these kind of things. It is what it is. You can't come near Harden late in the game. Durant is an absolute killer. So they are, and I thought Steve Nash did a better job coaching, even though the Clippers almost came back to win, even with whatever I'm saying, because of threes. The Nets ran good stuff late. They handled the press better than they did before. Nash went to a timeout. We didn't do that before. They're going to be a scary team to have to come back from. Luckily, you can score on them pretty well, and you may not always have to come back.
We did this went way down the rabbit hole with Justin Kabatko years ago, really smart guy who really started Basketball Reference. And basically, like, does defense win championships? Like, do you have to be great at defense win championships? And like the answer is like, not exactly. Like, you need to have a good differential between your offensive efficiency and your defensive efficiency, right? And you can look at the champions through the years, and they're like generally, have a big gap between offensive efficiency. That's enough. Like, you don't have to be top 5 in either one. You usually are top 5 in both if you're going to contend, but not always. This is a bold experiment, right? This is the one where we're going to be like the best offense ever. And then can you get enough of a gap that your terrible defense is, if you're favored by 6-7 points on average, it's good enough. Whatever mix that comes with, like, I mean, I have a feeling Won't work, but it could.
And it could unravel offensively too. Right now it's still sort of honeymoon phase. I'm not predicting them to win the East. I'm just saying, don't let them get too far ahead of you. Run your best stuff when you're down 2 in the third quarter. Like don't let them get 6-7 points ahead late in the game. They're going to be. I think they're going to be killers. I didn't really watch your team play last night. Oh, let's do this De'Aaron Fox thing.
Oh, it's so cool. Okay,
I haven't seen
it. King's Herald published this. Like De'Aaron Fox breaks down some of his best moves against the Pelicans. I particularly, do you mind clicking on that Twitter link? There's just an amazing. First, we just watch this play. It is really beautiful. Just as a fan, you're like, wow, this is fun to watch.
What De'Aaron Fox talk through his moves?
Well, this is one where he just makes the move, and then I'm going to tell you what he says
Okay.
about it. But I think it's going to magically appear here.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. It's the Twitter link, Judy, about De'Aaron Fox. It says it's a K Fippen is the name of the account.
Yeah, this one in particular, it says.
Yeah, watch this. Oh, that's pretty fun.
So I could talk about that.
Well, let me tell you what De'Aaron says really fast.
Oh yeah, please.
So he says, coming downhill, it's kind of 2-on-1 with the big men. And what you see with a lot of bigs in the league is they don't want their guy to score. So he's always going to go for the fake pass. If it's Rashawn Holmes or Marvin or Hassan or whoever's down there, a lot of times bigs are going to go for the fake pass because they don't want their guy to score. So that's definitely premeditated. And if he comes up to me, you just dump the ball off. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Well, that's not what happened on that particular play. It may have happened in some other plays. On that play, he faked out Lonzo Ball. But that is the nuts and bolts of what happens in gyms like mine all the time. He did it a hezzy go move, stop and start move, then use the ball screen, which created even more space. Then he exited a spin move, right? Which is not easy to do when you're moving at a pretty good pace, but clearly he's done it before. And then he faked the pass out, got Lonzo to move. When you're in my gym, I always tell players, because I don't do any competition stuff at all. But I would say play the game now. So don't just go score, because there's going to be a big dude waiting for you in a game. Fake them. Use your eyes to move defenders. Use the ball to fake people. And young guys who first start training don't understand what the veterans are doing. And I would say the same thing. Like, they're playing the game. Like they may see something in their minds that I don't say because they're working on their own game. They had reference points informed from a whole season, if this is summertime. And so De'Aaron Fox, I guarantee you, has done that a bunch in the gym. His comment about big guys, I thought was interesting because, and he's not necessarily right. The reality is your job is supposed to be, well, I guess you could say maybe he is right because they're going back to their guy. The job is to keep them from scoring, not to keep your man from scoring, period. The better teams understand that. The bad teams don't, period, end of story. The better teams know that if you score, it doesn't matter which guy scored, we got scored on. The bad teams are very much worried about, I'm getting scored on. And that's what coaching is all about defensively, is stop thinking about you got scored on, we got scored on. Do your job. Your job in the situation he's still talking about, where he's coming hard downhill, if you're a big and you're helping, your job first is to get that guard to be indecisive as to what you're going to do. Because as he's indecisive, if he slows down trying to figure out what's going on, which a lot of times they do because they're trying to read the game too, you allow a help defender to arrive. As I would say, the cavalry is going to come on a good team. They might come to help you behind you, which means help the guy you're leaving, or they may come take the guard, which allows you to go back to the big. The reason why guys like Jared Allen, DeAndre Jordan, Clint Capella, James Weissman are so effective in the dunk spot, and a guy like Kevon Looney, Draymond Green, not so much, is because they can reach to 13 feet when they jump and catch it still and finish. And so you don't have but a millisecond to make the right play as the big helping when De'Aaron Fox is coming downhill. If you commit too early, the lob is definitely coming. Your helper hasn't come in, right? If you come too late, then Fox probably has the score. It's that in-between game. That's where the whole game is being played. And it's really hard.
And so let's say he's going to pick on Hassan Whiteside here, right? So he's basically betting that the opposing big will make a selfish choice, right? Like you were just explaining, like he's gonna try to win a one-on-one competition, right?
He's going to stay home. He's hoping the
Right.
big stays home so he has a layup. Yeah.
So the big is gonna. So this is a bet that that big will be selfish.
Yeah.
Right. So like, and this is the tension of wear your mask. This is the tension of how we're going to be global climate change. Is the same thing. So basically, like you're going to do just what's easy and convenient and good for you, right? And there's a little bit of actually, Gerard's definitely join us for this if you don't mind. If you're available, Gerard. So this is for me a giant argument for advanced stats. So that guy is going to come off the. So let's say he shuts this guy down completely, right? And De'Aaron Fox gets layup after layup, right? He's gonna go back and say, "Hey, my guy scored 0 points. Like, it's your guys' problem, right?" That either will or won't work as an argument, right? If it does, if we're using box score based individual stats, then he's gonna say, "My guy scored 0 points. I did my job," and his team's gonna lose, and it might get him paid. Marcus Camby won Defensive Player of the Year doing something just like this, right? According to his own coaches at that time. So meanwhile, if you use plus minus, then basically when you're on the court, does your team tend to stop the ball? Like that's what you want. That's the way you want that stat to me, is because you want players to play to game that stat.
Right.
If you game that stat, your name is LeBron James.
Like, right. The big man in that scenario, it's never just one thing anyway, but it's all blackjack. If you hear me talking to players, I'm literally saying these words: we're playing blackjack, and that means we're going with the odds. Okay. Yeah. So if De'Aaron Fox was a lesser finisher, then we would mostly want him to be the one that has to finish and not throw the lob to a gigantic man that can easily catch and dunk. Now, you can't do that every time, because part of the reason why they don't finish as well is they have uncertainty. Well, if you give them certainty, this guy's never coming to help, they'll make more. So you have to create that uncertainty. Now, for some players, it doesn't matter. They're always going to score almost always anyway, in which case you have to stop them from scoring with their strong hand. The world's best players can finish either hand. James Harden, as great as he is with his right hand, he's better with his left. So you've got to make sure at the end you force James to finish with his right hand. And the third component would be, on that uncertainty front, you change up what you're doing. It's not just either or. A great example of that would be the years I was helping players trying to guard Dirk Nowitzki. So Dirk was the bizarro basketball player back before we even cared about threes so much. The 18-foot fadeaway for him seemed like a layup. But everyone else you played, you wanted him to shoot that shot, right? If you closed him out too hot, meaning too fast, he was good enough to shot fake or just go right by you, and he's 7 feet tall. He's scoring around the rim pretty easily. If you closed him out short, meaning you didn't go out very hard, that shot was like a layup to him. You couldn't force him left to right. He was good either way. So what I used to tell players is mix it up. Make him think, make him surprise him. Close him out hot when no one closed him out hot. Close him out short when no one closed him out short. You got to keep mixing it up and hope you get in his head a little bit. But that's why they're the best players in the world.
David, look at Caleb in the chat.
What's that?
Look at Caleb in the chat.
He misses. Yeah. But that's not an option. Like praying wasn't an option. We had to have a plan. And it's hard. It's hard for the world's best players. Not as hard for the other guys. De'Aaron Fox, I know I would make finish with his right hand for sure.
Gerard, I don't know if you have a plan, but I know you have a fetching cardigan. How's it going?
It's going well. No, I don't have a plan to stop the world's elite basketball players. I mean, you, as Coach says, mix it up and do different things, make them think, but they're the best in the world for a reason. Like more often than not, they're going to beat you because they're really good at basketball.
but the wins come in that margin. If you can, again, it's blackjack. If they have to keep hitting on 16 and they keep getting it, that's the tip your hat kind of thing, right? But you got to try to give them that 16 as the dealer, right? You've got to try to make it as hard as you possibly can. And yes, but they're not perfect. None of these guys are perfect, right? And you have to live in those margins. You can't foul them. You can't, yesterday when Morris fouled Harden, it was a huge mistake. The Clippers had a real chance to win that game despite being down like 8 a second before, whatever it was. And they foul Harden, who is great at drawing fouls, but he wasn't great on that play. That was just Morris being too eager to make a play. That's not smart. That's hitting on 17 when the dealer's showing 20. You can't do that. If you scripted something that said, what is the one thing you cannot do down 2, I think it was, late in the game against James Harden, the answer always is foul him shooting a 3. And that's what he did. That's an enormous mistake. You're not going to beat them doing those kinds of things. Right? They can take a tough shot.
I think it's interesting because, we all watch a lot of basketball, and, coach, because you'll coach players. Henry, if we're watching a game, we know what this play is coming in. Don't bite on the up fake. And what happens? Like, they bite on the, like, in the moment, right? Like, I think for a lot of players, even if you're drilled or coached or whatever, it's the ability or inability to kind of slow your mind down in that process and go back to, okay, we just went over this. I'm not going after this fake, right? And sometimes they do, but oftentimes in the heat and in the crucible, like, instinct or whatever kicks in, and, you bite on the fake or you reach, and bad news.
It's very hard. Like, it's alarming how fast the game is played.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I can't, honestly, sitting courtside, I can't even see it accurately. Like, I'm particularly bad at this, but, like, peak Chris Paul drives the lane and until I go home, or I guess now you can watch it on your phone. Like, I don't really know what happened on that play. All I know is it was mega fast. And then we watch it in slow-mo and you're like, oh, why didn't he do this? And it's like, because human brains can't even go that fast. It's like mostly, actually, David told me just yesterday, he was telling me that, like, if you think about a ceiling fan spinning, like, it's a blur. Unless you can really get yourself to focus on one and you understand the pattern of it, then you can see maybe one blade, right?
Yeah.
Like, so this, we're talking about at that speed, like, making great decisions. Like, I'm out. I definitely can't do it, right? Like,
I'm fouling every time, reaching and fouling every single time.
Yeah.
That analogy, though, is the thing, is that if the ceiling fan is going super fast, no one that I'm aware of can follow it. But if it's going just fast, you can train your eye to look at a blade and watch it focus on that spin, and it'll slow down. And so for people like me who've been watching this game for so long, the game's not fast. It doesn't mean I see every single thing. Of course I don't. Normally, if I see it a second time, I'll see the whole thing. But we know we're looking for it to begin with, and so do they, and they're the players. What drives me crazy, and this is to Gerard's point, Rudy Gobert knows better than to jump for a block shot of a guy that's 6 feet tall. Like, Rudy, just tall up, my man. You don't got to jump. You know that. You tend not to, but it's not every time. That's the adrenaline, right? That's the adrenaline.
If you want to make anybody stupid, just speed them up fast enough, right? Like, it's not because they're stupid. It's because they're so sped up, right? Like, at some point, the video game is like, we're all bad at the video game, right? I was doing a driving video game. I don't know if you guys can tell. But yeah, like, Chris Webber knows you need to make sure you have a timeout. Like, he's not a dumb guy.
Right.
He just happened fast, right? Like,
Well,
Sped up.
the sped up part, right? This is something we talk about all the time. I was talking to a player in the G League bubble right now yesterday about one of his teammates who was in my gym for a little bit this past fall, this past winter, and he doesn't, his motor's not as hot as I want it to be. I don't work with the kid. He just came for a little bit his coach wanted me to get my eyeballs on him some. He's got some things that he's got to get better at, but he doesn't get sped up. He's a former draft pick. He's 22, 23 years old. He's got a real chance to make it because he's really poised. And that's encouraging. What happens, though, is as you go a level up, you tend to get sped up. My son, you didn't speed him up in high school, but especially by the time he was a senior, he could play with college kids. And I wish sometimes he'd go faster, but he was always reading everything. And then he gets to the ACC, and he's admitted to me a couple weeks ago, he's like, Dad, the game is it's fast. And he doesn't mean the speed of the players alone. He's used to playing with fast guys too. It's all the things happening at the same time. And everyone's gigantic and long and tall and athletic and explosive and powerful. All those things make it faster too, right?
I thought about this. So the Blazers are like super shorthanded, and Damian Lillard's trying to single-handedly save them all the time down the stretch, and he's doing this. But there was one little moment where, like, I forget who he cooked, but he cooked somebody, and I was like, you just gave him that learning experience.
Yeah.
Right. he's reaching way deep in the bag of tricks of how he's going to score like down 1 in the fourth quarter in the playoffs. He's doing that stuff now, which is kind of heroic, but also like you're for your son in the ACC, like it's going to take him 100 of those and then he's going to be comfortable there, right? Like I was like, oh, Damian just gave him a bunch of stuff to learn from it, what it feels like to get cooked that exact way. Did you see Lillard drove baseline and got a dunk? Do you know the play I'm talking about?
No, did he really?
It was like, I was like, oh, you don't see that very often.
Wow.
He did it. Coach, we just circle back the whole fed up thing. So that's like Kawhi Leonard for me, right? Like never in a speed up mode, always at the pace he wants to go. Like, and you can see players trying to run and he just doesn't. Like, he doesn't get rushed. I was like, no, I'm going to get to this spot exactly at this point and I'm going to shoot now. Like, and it's actually really incredible when you watch those elite guys do that.
Well, think of it this way: when you're driving in a highway in your own town, and you know where every exit is, and you know where you're going, and you're going 80 miles an hour, 75 miles an hour, and it's easy. Now go to a different city where you know nothing, you're not sure where anything is. You're going.
I'd recommend
35.
Rome.
Right. But even if you're just going like 35, things are coming all over the place, right? There's lights in weird spots, and it's nerve-wracking. And you don't feel comfortable, right? I remember the old days. I remember I was driving long before any of this technology happened. We had the little TomTom Garmin GPS things, right? And they were a lifesaver, except you're in a city where lots of stuff is happening. And man, if someone called you on your phone, you were fucked, right? Like, I cannot talk right now. I'm driving. Meanwhile, you're going 18 miles an hour, but there's a lot of decisions happening and you don't know any of them. That's why Chris Paul. The game is like slow motion for Chris Paul, who's playing great. But speaking of Chris Paul, I did a cool thing last night. There was just 2 games on. I had Pistons Jazz, and I had Warriors Celtics. Okay. And I turned the volume off of both and I just allowed my brain to what was going on. Right. And one thing that really hit me was as the Jazz are winning by 20 and the Celtics Warriors game was very close, is one team was playing with their hair on fire in a good way. And it was the Pistons. And I thought, these guys don't realize they suck. Blake Griffin does. Did you guys see I don't know if it's made no one cares about the Pistons anymore, sadly, but do you see what Blake did at the end of the first half yesterday? Oh man. They did not play so good in the first half. They almost won the game, by the way, but they were getting blown out. So at halftime, he's walking into the tunnel and the camera's behind him, so you can't see it. He tears his jersey. Like, do you know how strong you have to be to do that?
Yeah.
I want to see. I wish someone had video on the other side. If he really got all of it, you couldn't tell. He was angry. They, meanwhile, came back and cut it to like maybe 4, down 22 in the late third, fourth. They just keep coming and coming with bad players and Jeremy Grant. So
David,
that's why I bring him up.
In real time, did you feel like you understood what had made him mad? Like, was it stuff on the court that you saw?
Yeah, I thought he sucked.
He sucked.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I thought he was bad. And I think, and I love it. I love that he's competitive. Like, I love that he wants to be better. And I don't think he played so well. He doesn't move great anymore. He wasn't terrible the whole game, but I thought he was just mad at himself and that they're a bad team, but I don't really know for sure. But they fought back and made it a hell of a game. The Jazz announcers were like, it's 12, it's 10, it's 8. Oh boy, it's 6. And I really think it was down to 4, if I remember right, because I watched the whole game. And then Bogdanovich did back-to-back threes, game was over. But Jeremy Grant is unbelievable. Yeah. So forget about scoring 20-something a game. I think he had 4 assists and 1 turnover yesterday. He's like their starting point guard is a rookie, Killian Hayes, who's not very good, and he's out anyway. So Jeremy Grant's like running their offense, making the dime for the bucket in this comeback. He can't stay in Detroit, can he?
They seem to really like him.
He's 26. All your young guys, they've got some young talented players. They're playing really hard for Dwayne Casey. By the time they're any good, I guess they're thinking maybe we'll develop some other guys and bring in more help. That's not a long-term approach. I just wonder, where could he go and elevate a team who's good into a very, very good team. And I started playing with, you don't got to put it up there, Judy, but I played with Phoenix. Phoenix got some good young players for Detroit. How good would they be if they have him next to DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, that kind of thing, you know?
Well, what's his best position?
Baller. Like just whatever. Baller.
Yeah, to Toronto, Bilal's just in there. Maybe you do with Jeremy Grant, because like that deal is now, he just signed it, right? That's a brand new deal he just signed. But this is what you do when you're these smaller market teams like OKC and Houston have all this draft capital, and you want to, even though he did play at OKC before, you want to get a guy who's potentially an all-star under contract because he won't sign there in free agency. You've got the capital to move over and say, hey, Detroit, look at all these fresh picks and all this stuff we got, right? And then you have that with whatever else you have. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like, ooh, actually, as I talk it out loud, that sounds
yeah. No, you got me going on that one. That sounds good.
Yeah, you don't, in my opinion, you don't trade Jeremy Grant without talking to him. Right. Because he signed for the money, but he might have been offered similar deals. And maybe he likes Detroit. Maybe his mom is from, I don't, whatever.
Well, he signed for the organization because he wanted to play for a black head coach and a black GM. So
great. So will they have one of those guys in, at least in the head coach side in Phoenix too? You talk to him, say, hey, we are thrilled. It's a very pleasant conversation. You can't lose if you're Detroit. We're so happy with you. You're playing better than what we're paying you. We can't offer you a new deal. You already got your deal, 3-year, with $60 million, whatever it is. If you are willing to go somewhere else, we can build our franchise better with younger players who match the other young players we have. We won't. If you want to stay, you're here for at least the rest of this year. But if you don't mind us searching, we will come to you with anything. And if you don't like it, we won't do it. We're not going to screw you. We just signed you. But you are now playing at a point now where you might have more value somewhere else for someone else and for us. We're open to that conversation. You can't go wrong having that conversation. And then you explore. You don't do it publicly. As Henry's saying, there are deals that are done in private. Of course there are, especially in these leagues. There's nothing wrong with that. You shouldn't be announcing this stuff. Phoenix is just one of the teams I thought they're not going to be a top 4 team without him. But with them, pretty fucking good.
You guys had started talking about Brooklyn, and it's a thought I had for a while, and it's a thought I really had at the end of this Clippers game. Really, I mean, look, I'm not saying they're going to win the finals, but the teams that are going to beat them in the playoffs are going to have to be clinical offensive teams, right? Like that really like are tactical and like tacticians offensively, right? To take apart the defense. But even if you do that, and that's like 2 teams, right? The 2 LA teams, maybe Milwaukee, whatever. But on the other end, you got the 3 best isolation scorers in the league and guys who are willing to pass, and you have, a 40+% shooter, Joe Harris. Yeah. I mean, that still may not be enough because they're so good offensively. Like I'm watching them and I'm like, and there's another ceiling, and I think you see this too, Coach. There's another ceiling they can get to.
For sure.
And it's like, yikes. Like, I don't even know what you do. So it'll be interesting.
I was thinking this could be, Tom Thibodeau had like the big wave of like how to defend in the NBA. And then, last year the Lakers did a different thing. They've been different. This is going to inspire the next great innovation in NBA defense. Like, I don't know what it's going to be, but someone will practice it against the Nets and learn something, right? Like, yeah. It'll be, I guess, 1 million very smart, long, quick people.
That's all you need.
You just have to outscore them. You've got to make sure you score more than them, so they're going to get their points. You got to make them a little bit less efficient. There's ways to do it.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Judy. Thank you, Trod. Thank you, David.
Read that article from Henry.